In the year 2473, humanity had finally stepped onto the galactic stage. For centuries, Earth had been alone in the dark, watching the stars with wonder but no way to reach them. Then came the breakthroughs, faster-than-light drives, stable wormholes, and contact with alien species. At first, the galaxy ignored humans. They were seen as young, loud, and unimportant. But over time, human colonies spread across nearby systems. Their ships grew stronger. Their voices grew louder. And eventually, the Galactic Concord, the great alliance of alien civilizations, granted Earth provisional membership. The Concord was ruled by the Zenthari Empire, an ancient and proud race with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. Their emperor, Korath the Unbroken, had ruled for over 200 years. He had crushed rebellions, expanded borders, and never once bowed to another power. To him, humans were little more than clever animals, useful for labor, perhaps but not equals. To prove humanity's seriousness, the United Earth Council chose a diplomat named Daniel Shaw. He was 34, calm under pressure and known for his fairness. He had helped end a water war on Mars and negotiated peace between rival asteroid mining guilds. He wasn't a soldier, but he carried the weight of Earth's hopes on his shoulders. Daniel traveled alone to Velos, the Zenthari capital world. The city of Zalthor rose like a forest of black crystal towers, humming with energy and guarded by silent drones. He was met by Imperial officials who barely looked at him. They led him through corridors lined with statues of past emperors, each one taller and more imposing than the last. The air smelled of ozone and something sharp like burnt metal. His audience with Emperor Korath was scheduled for the third day. Until then, Daniel was confined to a guest chamber with no windows and only a single datapad for communication. He used it to review Concord law, human trade complaints, and reports from Helios 9, a frontier world where hundreds of human settlers had been arrested and sent to labor camps for disturbing the peace. There had been no trial, no appeals, just chains and silence. When the day came, Daniel wore a simple gray suit, Earth's formal attire, and walked into the grand hall without guards or escorts. The hall was vast, lit by floating orbs of blue light. At the far end, seated on a throne carved from a single meteorite, was Emperor Korath. He was taller than any human, his long fingers resting on the arms of his seat, his expression unreadable. "Daniel Shaw of Earth," Korath said, his voice deep and smooth, like stone sliding over stone. "You have been granted this audience as a courtesy. Speak quickly. My time is not for hatchlings." Daniel bowed slightly, not out of fear but respect for protocol. "Your Majesty," he began, "I come not to beg but to remind. The Concord Charter guarantees equal treatment for all member species. Yet human citizens on Helios 9 were imprisoned without cause. Their homes were seized. Their children taken to re-education centers. This violates Article 12, Section 3. A murmur rose from the courtiers lining the walls. None had expected a human to quote the charter so precisely. Korath's eyes narrowed. Helios 9 is a Zenthari protectorate. The humans there broke local law by refusing to pay tribute and spreading anti-imperial propaganda. They are lucky they were not executed on the spot. "Tribute?" Daniel asked, keeping his voice steady. "The Concord abolished forced tribute 50 cycles ago. And the so-called propaganda was a petition for clean water and medical aid, signed by over 2,000 settlers. You question my judgment?" Korath leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You who come from a world that still fights over scraps of land and drops of water? You think your laws bind me?" "I think the charter binds us all," Daniel replied. "Even emperors." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Then Korath stood. The court froze. "You insult the crown," he declared. "You insult the Zenthari people, and you insult the order that keeps this galaxy from falling into chaos." Before Daniel could respond, armored guards surged forward. They seized his arms, twisted them behind his back, and dragged him from the hall. He did not struggle. He knew resistance would only confirm their view of humans as wild and uncontrolled. He was thrown into a holding cell beneath the spire. No lawyer. No translator. Just cold metal walls and the hum of distant machinery. Through a narrow grate in the ceiling, he could see a sliver of Velos's twin moons. That night, a guard brought him a final meal, bland paste and water. Daniel didn't eat. Instead, he activated his wristcom, knowing it would be monitored but hoping his words might still get through. He recorded a short message. "If you're hearing this," he said softly, "then I'm already gone. Tell Earth I did my best. Tell them not to mourn me, but to remember. Remember that we stood tall even when they tried to break us. And tell them, we are not hatchlings. We are humans." He ended the transmission just as the cell door hissed open. 2 executioners entered, clad in black armor carrying neural rods. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Outside in the Grand Plaza, a crowd had gathered. Millions more watched through live feeds across the galaxy. The Zenthari wanted this to be a lesson. A warning. A reminder of who held power. Daniel was led to the center of the plaza. His hands were bound. His face was calm. When the executioner raised the rod, Daniel looked not at the weapon but at the sky, toward the stars, toward home. The rod touched his neck. Light flared. His body went still. He fell without a sound. The broadcast cut to black. Then, across every human world, from Earth to Titan to the outer colonies, a single message appeared on every screen, repeating in every language. Daniel Shaw is dead, killed by the Zenthari Empire. On Earth, in a quiet apartment in New Chicago, a young woman named Mia Carter stared at the screen, tears streaming down her face. She had trained with Daniel at the Diplomatic Academy. They had shared coffee, dreams, and late-night debates about justice. Now he was gone. And somewhere deep in the United Earth Council chambers, Defense Minister Carl Briggs closed his eyes and whispered, "They just made a terrible mistake." The galaxy held its breath. Humanity did not. They began to move. Part 2. The news of Daniel Shaw's death spread faster than any ship could fly. Within minutes, every human colony, station, and outpost knew what had happened. On Earth, the streets filled with people. They did not shout. They did not break things. They stood in silence, holding candles, photos, or nothing at all. In Neo Delhi, a child placed a single white flower at the base of the Unity Monument. In Luna Prime, miners turned off their drills and stood still for 10 full minutes. Even on Mars, where dust storms howled across the red plains, the domed cities fell quiet. Inside the United Earth Council chambers, the mood was different. Anger boiled beneath the surface. Council members argued in hushed but sharp voices. Some wanted to send a formal protest to the Galactic Concord. Others demanded immediate sanctions. But Carl Briggs, the defense minister, sat quietly at the far end of the table, his hands folded, his face unreadable. Lena Ortiz, the youngest counselor ever elected, stood up. She was not a soldier. She had spent most of her life studying stars and building telescopes. But she had also grown up hearing stories of Earth's wars, how silence had often been mistaken for weakness. "We cannot just send words," she said. "Words got Daniel killed. If we send more, they will think we are begging." "And what would you have us do?" asked Counselor Ellis, an older man with tired eyes. "Declare war on the Zenthari Empire? They have thousands of ships. We have a few dozen. We don't need thousands," Lena replied. "We just need one message they cannot ignore." Carl finally spoke. His voice was low but firm. "For the past 20 years, we've been building something in secret. Not an army, not a fleet for invasion, but a tool, a scalpel, not a hammer. It's ready." A murmur ran through the room. Most counselors knew about the Shadow program, rumors of hidden shipyards beyond Pluto, of engineers working on drives that left no trace, of weapons that could disable a target without destroying it. But no one had seen it. No one had confirmed it existed. "Are you saying we can strike back?" Ellis asked. "I'm saying we can make them regret what they did," Carl said. "Not by burning their cities, not by killing millions, but by showing them that even in their strongest fortress they are not safe if they harm one of us." Lena nodded. Justice is not revenge, but it must be felt. After hours of debate, the council voted. Not for war, not for peace, but for action. Operation Iron Resolve was approved by a narrow margin. The goal was clear. Respond to the execution of a human diplomat with a response so precise, so undeniable, that the galaxy would never again think of humans as helpless. While the council met, intelligence teams worked around the clock. They studied Zenthari patrol routes, communication frequencies, and palace security. They learned that Emperor Korath rarely left the Imperial Spire. He held court there every day, slept there every night, believed no enemy could ever reach him. What the Zenthari did not know was that human scientists had spent years studying their technology. After the first contact incident on Proxima b, Earth had recovered fragments of a damaged Zenthari scout ship. From those pieces, they built cloaking fields that bent light and sensors, graviton stabilizers that allowed silent acceleration, and neural jammers that could blind enemy tracking systems for short bursts. Deep in the Kuiper Belt, hidden behind ice and rock, 12 warships waited. They were sleek, black, and fast. No names were painted on their hulls, only numbers. At their center floated the UES Vanguard, the command vessel, larger than the others but just as quiet. Its captain, Admiral Paul Hayes, had lost his brother in the Titan insurgency. He knew the cost of hesitation. On board the Vanguard, Lieutenant Mia Carter reviewed the mission plan for the 10th time. She had requested this posting the moment she heard Daniel was dead. She wasn't just his friend. She understood his belief that dignity mattered more than force. But now force was the only language the Zenthari seemed to understand. "We're not going to start a war," Paul told his crew during the final briefing. "We're going to end a lie. The lie that we are weak. The lie that they can kill us and walk away." The fleet would jump to the edge of the Velos system under total silence. No comms, no emissions. They would ride the gravity waves of the system's gas giants to mask their approach. Once in orbit, a small team would descend to the surface, not to fight, but to deliver a single truth. Back on Earth, families gathered in homes and public squares. They did not know the details of the plan, but they felt the shift. The silence was gone. In its place was a quiet determination. Factories ran double shifts. Engineers worked without sleep. Pilots trained in simulators until their hands ached. Lena Ortiz stood on a balcony overlooking Geneva, watching the sunrise. She thought of Daniel. He had once told her that diplomacy only worked when both sides believed the other could fight. "If they think you'll never swing a fist," he'd said, "they'll keep slapping you forever." Now humanity was ready to swing, not wildly, but with purpose. Mia recorded a short message before departure. She didn't send it. She just saved it in her personal log. "If I don't come back," she whispered, "tell them we did it for Daniel. Tell them we remembered." The engines of the Shadow Fleet powered up. No fanfare, no speeches, just a soft hum that vanished into the void. As the first ship folded space and disappeared, Earth held its breath again, but this time not in fear, in hope. And far away on Velos, Emperor Korath sat on his throne, unaware that the galaxy was about to change. He still believed humans were hatchlings. He did not know they had grown claws. Part 3. The Shadow Fleet moved like a whisper through the dark. 12 ships, black as void, slipped out of folded space at the edge of the Velos system. No alarm sounded. No patrol drones turned toward them. They were ghosts, riding the silent currents of gravity between the gas giants Zorath and Morel. Their engines emitted no heat. Their hulls reflected no light. To the Zenthari sensors, they simply did not exist. Aboard the UES Vanguard, Admiral Paul Hayes stood on the command deck, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the main display. The screen showed the Zenthari homeworld, swirling clouds of violet and gold ringed by orbital stations and defense platforms. Each one bristled with weapons, scanners, and fighter bays. On paper, it was impossible to get close, but Paul knew paper did not account for human ingenuity. "Status," he said, voice low. "All ships report green," replied Mia Carter from the tactical station. Her fingers danced over the console, adjusting course corrections and sensor dampeners. "We're riding Zorath's magneto-tail. Should stay hidden for another 3 hours." Paul nodded. 3 hours was all they needed. The plan was tight, fragile, and perfect. They would not fire a single shot unless forced. They would not announce their presence. They would strike like a shadow at noon, gone before anyone saw it move. Deep in the ship's belly, 6 operatives suited up in matte black infiltration armor. Their leader was Major Ryan Cole, a quiet man with sharp eyes and a reputation for getting in and out without a trace. He had served on covert missions from Europa to the Oort Cloud. This was different. This was personal. Each operative carried minimal gear, a neural disruptor, a short-range comms unit, a breaching charge no larger than a coin, and a single human flag, folded neatly in a chest pouch. No weapons for killing, only tools for precision. Ryan checked his team one last time. "Remember," he said, "we are not here to fight. We are here to deliver a message." In and out, clean, silent. They boarded the drop pods, small unpowered capsules designed to drift down on thermal currents, mimicking space debris. The pods would detach from the Vanguard once it reached high orbit, then glide silently toward the Imperial spire. Back on the bridge, tension hung thick in the air. Every second counted, every breath mattered. Mia watched the Zenthari patrol patterns on her screen. Their routines were predictable, clockwork precision unchanged for decades. That was their weakness. They believed no one could reach them, so they stopped looking. "Orbital defense grid is cycling," she reported. "Blind spot opens in 42 seconds. Mark it," Paul said. The Vanguard shifted course by less than a degree, slipping into the narrow gap between sensor sweeps. For 17 seconds they were invisible. Then the gap closed, but it was enough. "Drop pods away," Mia announced. 6 dark shapes peeled off the Vanguard's underbelly and began their slow fall toward the planet. Inside each pod, the operatives lay still, hearts steady, minds focused. Ryan thought of Daniel Shaw. He had never met him, but he had read his reports, studied his words. Daniel had tried to speak reason to a stone wall. Now Ryan would speak in a language the wall understood. The descent took 20 minutes. The pods entered the upper atmosphere without burning, cooled by heat-dispersing gel and shaped to scatter radar. They landed on the roof of the Imperial Spire just after midnight local time. The surface was smooth obsidian, cold to the touch. No guards, no cameras. The Zenthari never imagined anyone could land here. Ryan tapped his wrist. The team moved as one. They attached micro-clamps to the edge of the roof and rappelled down the side of the tower, 50 stories in total. Their boots made no sound. Their suits absorbed all light. They passed windows where courtiers slept unaware. At the 48th floor, they found the service entrance to the throne room corridor. Ryan placed the breaching charge. It hissed softly, melting through the lock without noise or flash. The door slid open. Inside, the hallway stretched ahead, lit by faint blue strips along the floor. 2 honor guards stood at the far end, motionless, ceremonial spears in hand. But they were just for show. Their armor was polished, not battle-ready. Their eyes were half-lidded with boredom. Ryan signaled. 2 operatives peeled off, moving like smoke. Within seconds, the guards slumped to the floor, unconscious from neural taps to the base of the skull. No harm. Just sleep. The throne room doors were massive, carved with scenes of Zenthari conquest. Ryan placed his palm on the control panel. The system recognized no threat, just another internal access request. The doors parted. Emperor Korath sat alone. He was not sleeping, not reading. He was staring at a star map projected above his throne, his long fingers tracing the edges of human-controlled systems. Perhaps he was planning the next move. Perhaps he was already thinking of how to punish Earth further. He did not hear the team enter. He did not sense their presence until Ryan stood 10 feet from the throne. Korath turned slowly. His glowing eyes narrowed. "Who dares?" Ryan did not let him finish. He raised the neural disruptor, a small cylinder no bigger than a pen. It emitted a pulse tuned to Zenthari biology. 1 pulse. 1 second, Korath gasped. His hand flew to his chest. His eyes widened in shock, then confusion, then nothing. He slumped forward, dead before his body hit the floor. No explosion. No blood, just silence. Ryan stepped forward. He pulled the folded human flag from his pouch and pinned it to the throne with Daniel Shaw's recovered comms badge, the one found in the execution plaza, now polished and clean. The flag was simple, dark blue with a white circle in the center, Earth symbol. Then he turned. Time to go. The team retraced their steps. No alarms had sounded. No one had seen them. By the time Palace staff found the Emperor, the drop pods were already back in orbit, docking with the Vanguard. Mission complete, Ryan reported over comms. Paul exhaled. Bring them home. The fleet turned away from Velos, engines silent, paths hidden. They jumped back into folded space before the Zenthari even realized their Emperor was gone. On Earth, no one celebrated. Not yet. But in homes and barracks and labs, people felt it, a shift in the air. Like the moment before thunder, when the world holds still and waits. Mia looked out the viewport as the stars stretched into lines. She thought of Daniel. She thought of the flag on that alien throne. And for the first time since his death, she smiled. They had not started a war. They had ended a myth. The myth that humans would not fight back. The myth that their lives meant nothing. Now the galaxy would learn the truth. Fall. The silence in the Imperial Spire lasted only 17 minutes. A junior aide bringing morning scrolls to the throne room found Emperor Korath slumped forward, eyes open, hands cold. The human flag fluttered slightly in the air current from the ventilation shaft. The comms badge pinned to the fabric gleamed under the blue light. The aide dropped his tray. The sound echoed through the hall like a gunshot. Within an hour, every high-ranking Xanthari official was in the spire. Generals, ministers, and royal advisors crowded the throne room, voices rising in disbelief and fury. Scanners found no signs of forced entry, no energy weapons, no explosives. Just a single neural pulse, clean, precise, and unmistakably human in design. They had studied human tech after first contact. They knew what it looked like, but how had they gotten in? How had they left? The orbital defenses had recorded nothing. The palace sensors had detected no intruders. It was as if the humans had walked through walls. Panic spread faster than logic. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Burn every human colony, glass Earth from orbit. Others, quieter but more powerful, warned that such action might spark a wider conflict. The merchant guilds, who traded with human freighters for rare earth minerals and bioengineered crops, feared economic collapse. Neutral systems within the Concord watched closely, their own oppressed populations beginning to whisper. On the planet below, citizens gathered in the streets, confused and afraid. For generations they had been taught that the Xanthari Empire was eternal, that their emperor was untouchable. Now he was dead, killed not in glorious battle but in his own throne room by a species they had mocked as primitive. Back on Earth, no official statement was made. The United Earth Council remained silent. But in secure channels, messages flew between colonies. Factories slowed. Schools held special assemblies. In New Chicago, a baker placed a loaf of bread outside his shop with a note, "For the crew of the Vanguard." No one knew if they would ever see it, but the gesture mattered. Aboard the UES Vanguard, the crew rested. They were exhausted, not from fighting, but from the weight of what they had done. Mia Carter sat alone in the observation lounge, staring at the stars. She thought of Daniel. She thought of Korath. She wondered if justice felt like this, cold, quiet, and heavy. Admiral Paul Hayes walked the decks, checking on his people. He saw no celebration, only relief and something deeper, pride maybe, or purpose. He stopped by the memorial alcove where Daniel's dog tag now rested beside other fallen. He didn't speak. He just stood there for a long time. 3 days after the strike, the Galactic Concord called an emergency assembly. Every member species was required to attend, either in person or by hologram. The chamber on neutral world Sierra 7 filled with delegates, tall insectoid xylos, gelatinous veln, avian cathari, and many more. At the human station, Lena Ortiz stood alone. She wore a simple gray suit like Daniel had. No armor, no weapons, just her voice. The Xanthari delegation arrived last. Their lead envoy, High Minister Vrel, glared at Lena as he took his place. When the assembly head called for statements, Vrel rose immediately. "The Xanthari Empire demands justice," he boomed. "Earth has committed an act of war. They assassinated our sovereign in cold blood. They must be punished. Their worlds must be stripped of rights. Their fleet must be dismantled." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some agreed. Others stayed silent. Then Lena stepped forward. She did not raise her voice. She did not point fingers. She simply spoke. "We did not start this," she said. "Your empire executed a human diplomat for speaking the truth. He was unarmed. He was alone. He asked only for fairness under your own laws. You killed him on live broadcast as a warning." She paused. The chamber grew still. "We did not send an army. We did not bomb your cities. We sent 6 people to deliver one message. Harm one of ours and you will answer for it. Not with fire, not with hate, but with truth." She looked directly at Vrel. "You called us hatchlings. But hatchlings grow, and now you see we are not weak." A long silence followed. Then from the far side of the chamber, a Xylos delegate nodded slowly. The Veln representative rippled in what humans had learned was a sign of respect. Even some Xanthari lower ministers looked away, ashamed. The assembly head, an ancient Cathari named Orlan, cleared his throat. "The Concord Charter forbids extrajudicial executions. The death of Daniel Shaw violated that law. The response by Earth, while extreme, was not unprovoked. Vrel opened his mouth to argue, but Orlan raised a feathered hand. Enough. The Conquered will review all trade and legal policies regarding provisional members. Human colonies on Helios 9 will be released within the week. Tariffs will be suspended pending full membership review. It was not a victory speech. It was not revenge. But it was justice. When Lena returned to Earth, crowds waited at the spaceport. Not cheering. Not waving flags. Just standing, watching as she walked down the ramp. She smiled faintly and kept walking. In the days that followed, changes came fast. Human prisoners were freed. Trade routes reopened. Diplomatic channels once blocked now buzzed with messages. Other species began reaching out, quietly, carefully asking how Earth had done it. How they had struck without war. On Velos, the Zinthari held a state funeral for Korath. But during the ceremony, a young court scribe noticed something. The human flag was gone from the throne. No one spoke of it. But everyone knew it had been there. And in the quiet corners of the galaxy, new ideas began to grow. Ideas about courage, about dignity, about what happens when the small refuse to stay small. Back on the Vanguard, now docked in lunar orbit, Mia finally placed Daniel's dog tag in the ship's memorial alcove. She touched it once, then turned away. She knew he would have hated the violence. But she also knew he would have understood why it was necessary. Earth had not become a conqueror. It had become a guardian. And the galaxy would never see humans the same way again. Orphan months passed. The galaxy did not explode into war. No fleets clashed in deep space. No planets burned. Instead, something quieter happened, something deeper. The balance of power shifted not with thunder but with a whisper. Humans were no longer ignored. They were watched, studied, respected. On Earth, life returned to a kind of normal, but it was a new normal. Children in schools learned about Daniel Shaw not just as a diplomat, but as a symbol. His name was spoken with the same weight as old heroes from Earth's past. In Geneva, the memorial was finished. A simple stone pillar in a quiet garden with his name carved deep and the words beneath. They thought we were weak. They were wrong. People left flowers there, not just on anniversaries, but on ordinary days, as if to say thank you. The United Earth Council changed too. Lena Ortiz was elected to a higher seat. Not because she wanted power, but because people trusted her to speak with both strength and wisdom. She worked quietly with other species now, not as a beggar at the table, but as an equal. Trade deals were rewritten. Human engineers helped repair damaged conquered outposts. In return, alien scientists shared knowledge about clean energy and medicine. It was not friendship yet, but it was a start. Aboard the UES Vanguard, the crew was given leave. Most returned to Earth or their home colonies. Mia Carter went back to New Chicago. She walked the streets where she and Daniel had once argued about ethics over cheap coffee. Now the cafe was filled with students wearing pins shaped like Earth's flag. She sat at their old table, ordered black coffee, and let the noise of the city wash over her. She did not feel joy, not exactly. But she felt peace, the kind that comes after a storm has passed and the sky is clear again. Admiral Paul Hayes retired, though no one believed he would stay retired long. He moved to a small house on the coast of what used to be California. He fished in the morning and read old books in the afternoon. Sometimes former crew members visited. They never talked about Velos. They talked about the stars, the sea, and what came next. The Shadow Fleet was not disbanded. It was hidden again, waiting. Not for war, but for protection. Earth had learned its lesson. Peace must be guarded, not just wished for. Across the galaxy, other changes unfolded. On the mining world of Kethos 4, a group of enslaved workers, small furry beings called the Ryle, rose up not with weapons, but with words. They quoted the Conquered Charter. They demanded fair treatment. When their overseers threatened them, the Rill simply said, "Remember Earth." The overseers backed down. Word spread. In the merchant lanes near the Orion Spur, human freighters sailed freely now, no longer stopped and searched without cause. Captains tipped their hats to Zinthari patrol ships not out of fear but out of habit. The Zinthari, for their part, kept their distance. Their new emperor, a younger, more cautious ruler named Jorath, had issued a quiet order. Do not provoke the humans. Let them be. No one spoke openly about Korath's death. But everyone knew. and everyone understood the message. Back on Earth, a new generation grew up hearing the story. Not as a tale of violence, but as a lesson in dignity. Parents told their children, "We do not start fights, but we do not run from them either." Schools taught that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. One evening, Mia stood at the Geneva Memorial. The sun was setting, painting the stone in gold. A young boy, no older than 8, stood beside her holding a single white flower. He looked up at her. Was he really brave? The boy asked. Mia knelt. He was just a man, she said. But he stood up when others sat down. That's what made him brave. The boy placed the flower at the base of the pillar and walked away. Mia stayed a while longer, watching the light fade. Far above, in lunar orbit, the Vanguard sat silent. Its engines were cold, its weapons powered down, but its crew was ready. Not for revenge, not for glory, but for the next time someone forgot what humanity stood for. The galaxy was vast, full of old empires and ancient grudges. But now in one small corner of it, a new truth had taken root. Humans were not hatchlings. They were not slaves. They were not beggars. They were people who remembered their dead, honored their promises, and protected their own. And that was enough. On the edge of human space, a new listening post was built. It did not carry guns. It carried voices, broadcasts in 100 languages, sharing stories, music, science, and hope. The message was simple. We are here. We are human, and we will not be erased. In time, other species began sending their own signals back. Not demands, not threats, just greetings, questions, curiosity. The galaxy had not become kind overnight, but it had become careful. And sometimes that was the first step toward peace. Mia turned from the memorial and walked toward the city lights. Behind her, the stone stood quiet under the stars. Ahead, the future waited. Not perfect, not easy, but theirs to shape. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like home.